Warning, don't listen if it's a podcast you want. This is a Chumcast. Just your basic gabfest among chums. A little news, some entertainment, an annoying opinion or two, and, if you're lucky, maybe even a chuckle.
They've done studies, 60% of the time, it works every time.
So it's time to buckle up. Whetstone Entertainment, in association with Is Chill Productions, presents Don't Listen, a basic Chumcast. And here are your hosts, Big Red and the Shebs.
Remember, everyone, just don't be yourselves.
Namaste, everybody. This is Big Red. Thank you for tuning in. This is part 2 of my tribute to my father. So the final here is that he was dwindling because he couldn't eat anything. He was aspirating, right? And he couldn't drink anything. He was on all these drips. He had, this is another thing that you'll never forget. And I hope everybody gets this opportunity with the person that they love, if they can. So I'm spending every day by his bedside. I'm every day. I'm there talking to him. I'm telling him I love him. I'm telling him that, I'm going to admit that he can let go. I'm telling him that everything that you could imagine, that you would want to tell your parents before they pass away. So we have like a week or so before that. And I'm like, if you want to let go, just let go. You can let go. I'll handle everything. And it was not as hard as you think it was, because I had to play a game. I had to be strong for him the whole time that I was in there. But it was, I cried probably just about every single day for a month. Everything would make you cry. So my dad, when he got strong enough, he said to me, don't you worry about me. Mm-hmm. Don't you worry about me. I'm going to be all right. God is with us. And I'll never forget it. So I took that as, oh man, it's going to be a comeback, another comeback. It's going to be another comeback. Oh, I can't believe it. It was the most comforting thing that I had probably ever. Don't you worry about me. I'm going to be all right. God is with us. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that.
How could you?
Never forget that. And, but what he was really telling me, was I'm done. Mm-hmm. I'm completely, I'm done with this shit. I'm done. That was really what he was. Don't you worry about me. I'm going to be all right. God is with us. And that's amazing. That's another amazing thing, is I got to see his relationship with God. I don't know what people believe. I don't care what people believe. It doesn't matter to me. But my dad had a very firm belief in God and a very strong conviction. And my dad was a very humble servant. Everything in his life was about serving God. Everything. He was humble about it. The guys at work used to call him a preacher. That was his whole life. So, and I was the rebel. I was the guy who, didn't believe in shit and had to be dragged to the church but then I got to see that relationship. I got to see God, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it. We call it God. I got to see him protected, and I got to see all of this stuff happen in God's time. And I had to give it to God. I couldn't control any of it. So, I had to just understand that, Dad was going to go when his name was, my dad used to always say, when the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. Right. So, That was really hard.
You know, your dad saying that to you was not him saying he's done. It's actually was a gift to you to help you relieve you of the burden,
Right.
the worry.
Don't you worry about me.
That he knew you had for him.
Oh yeah.
He was trying to say, okay, son, we're okay. You know, you can, it's a gift to you that he just says, okay, don't worry.
We're going to be okay.
You're okay. And in many respects, it was the biggest thank you for what you did for him. Yeah.
Yeah. But that'll never go away. You know, that will never go away. So this is where and everyone has these stories, right? And when other people would tell me these stories, I just thought it was crazy. So I took you'd think they're crazy, right? When they talk about the spiritual awakening and the end of life. I heard end of life
Right.
forever. So you think it's crazy, but I will tell you that what happened with my dad was that I took my mom in there and he was like, let's go, boy. He had bounced completely back from another setback. And we got there and he was in this great mood. His big blue eyes were wide open and he was sitting up and, you know, I would always take the covers off of him in bed and look at his legs and look at his arms and check out his chest and look at his whole body and feel him up and, you know, check out his legs and, you know, rub his legs and stuff. And he was just loving it. He was like, yeah, you know, mom was rubbing his legs and I was rubbing his legs. And he was like, yeah, get it over there, get it up there, get it over here, rub it down. You know, he was spry, dude. He was so spry. And I was like, Mom, oh my God, I can't believe it. Yesterday or day before, I thought the dude was done. And look at this. He's like talking and smiling and all good. And these mechanic guys showed up. His buddies from work showed up and they were like, and he one of the guys he kind of didn't like that much. And he was like, bye-bye. You gone yet? Bye-bye. Bye-bye. You know, he kept saying bye-bye to this guy just to get rid of him. Because the guy would kind of show up just to eat the meals that he wasn't eating, that they would serve him. He's a good guy. His bud is a good guy. But anyway, so, you know, he thought that dad was on the way back. And, you know, and then like the next day he was good too. Okay. So this is the day before he passes. So the day before he passes, he is, my day with him was great. I was filled with hope and encouragement. And I thought, oh my God, you know, he's going to come back. Like smiling and I got all these new doctors. So you get doctors for a month, you get a team of doctors for a month, and then they all rotate, right? So I was sitting by his bedside, and all these doctors were coming in, introducing themselves, and I was like, yeah, you know, we're not going to have any suffering, we're not going to have any pain, and we're going to empty the 6-shooter, and he's doing really good, and they were all coming in like, whoa, because they would just read the data. And then come in and say hello, right? They would read, dude's 91. He's on his way out. We did all these scans. He's got this pneumonia. He's got this COVID. He's an old man. He's not going to live. He's blah, blah, blah. You know, they would read all this crap and then they would come in and introduce themselves. And they'd be like, oh yeah, your dad, great. Oh my God. They were just shocked. They were all like, oh my God, your dad's doing great. Wow. Okay. Whoa. We might be able to work with this. So my dad was smiling during that. He was getting a big kick out of watching me give all these doctors, you know, shit. Like he was like smiling. He was like into it. I can't tell you the roller coaster. It was like a roller coaster. Every day was like a roller coaster, up and down, up and down. And at the end, it seemed like it was great. So I get a call. I left him, you know, I would leave sometimes a little bit early if it was all good.
Right.
Because I didn't want to, you know, I wanted to leave with a good feeling. I wanted to leave with some positivity.
And you still had another kid at home.
Yeah, that's right. And I still had another kid at home. So I go home and we're outside of everything's good. We're, you know, expecting that dad's going to make a comeback. And then 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm outside of the danger zone. You know, the danger zone, 10 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings and they're like, your dad's oxygen just tanked. Your dad's oxygen is, he was almost completely off of oxygen the day before. He was at 20 25 liters. And we just walking around, we breathe in 21 liters. Okay. So he was almost completely off of the oxygen. And when I left the day before, then they called and said, your dad's oxygen completely tanked. We took him to 35. We took him to 45. We took him to 60. We took him to 70. And he didn't get back, didn't stabilize until 80%. 80% oxygen is being forced into his lungs. And his blood pressure had dropped all the way to, I think, like 78, 76, 74 over 40, very low. So, imagine getting this call at 10 o'clock in the morning. You're just like, what did they do? How does this happen? So you're in shock. So you get yourself together and they're like, you got to get here. You got to make a decision about his comfort, hospice, what we're going to do. We need you to be here. And so it takes about 30 minutes to get to Palo Alto, maybe tops, like 20 minutes. Get to Palo Alto, and it was just no good. So he was back on the Darth Vader mask. He was pumping oxygen into him at 80%. He was not looking good at all. I mean, I could tell every single time I went in there, right off the top, I could tell just looking in his eyes or seeing him. I knew no matter what the report was, I always knew whether he was good or not, whether he could talk to me, whether he couldn't talk to me, whether his eyes were shut, whether they were open. I could always tell. And this time it was not good. And I was like, what happened? And my mom was there with me. And, again, 62 years with this man, and you're having to try and witness this. Mm-hmm. I've never seen anything like that either. You spent the majority of your entire life with this person, and you're looking at that. You're witnessing that. You're witnessing death, really. So they were like, when we got there, I put mom in the room. I always protected her from the doctors. I didn't want her to be involved with any of the decision making. So I put her in the room with dad, and she's in there by his bedside. And I came out of that ICU unit into the hallway to talk to these doctors. There were like 4 or 5 doctors, and they're like, it's not good. It's not good. He's not coming back. He's 91 years old. He has got, but this is end of life. They kept saying end of life, right? Like he's shutting down. They kept saying, and I'm like, hang on a minute. I got to figure this out. Like, I'm not making this decision. I got to call I got to call some people in my family. So I called my brother. I'm like, you got to get out here. Dad's going to pass. These are okay, well, you got to keep him comfortable. You got to keep him comfortable. I know that, you fucking idiot. I know that. You got any other freaking brain knowledge for me? You got anything else? Any bright ideas for me? Just get on a plane, dude. You're already kind of missing it. I don't know if he's going to make it. So I'm making all these calls to my family, and, a doctor comes back up to me because I'm like, we got to figure this out. There's got to be something that I'm missing here. What happened? Like, what happened between last night and today? Like, that was the question I'm asking. How did he go from being so great to not? This doctor comes up to me. I hang up with my brother or my cousins or whoever I was talking to. And she's like, we can do this blood transfusion. We can do a slow blood drip. We'll do a really slow blood drip. And I'm like, what's the risk? What's that going to do? Well, we can get his blood pressure up enough to where we can do something invasive, where we can pull out all of that. We can suction out all of the, both of my dad's lungs were collapsed from all of the juice and schmegma and inflammation and all that crap that was in there. Both of them. And he was, lifting his shoulder to breathe. And he had this heavy mask, we called it the Darth Vader mask on his face. So she was like, there's one last thing. She felt bad for me, dude. This was the new doctor. She saw that I was fighting for my dad. She felt bad for me. And she came out to the waiting room and said to me, saw me making all these calls. I hung up, and she was like, we can do one last thing. We can do this blood transfusion. It's like a shot in the dark. But if we can get his blood pressure back up again, then we can do these invasive things where, we can remove all that stuff and maybe get him back stable. And I was like, well, what's the risk? And she's like, well, if we go in there and we nick him which there's like a 70% chance that he's going to bleed out. And, you know,
Same as before.
right, same as before. So I was like, you know what? Okay, let's do it. Whatever. At this point, I'm exhausted. Like I'm completely exhausted. Like, and I'm in shock, right? And I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and give it a shot. So I'm calling. She leaves there. I see these doctors running around. All my doctors are like in the hallway as I'm talking. I'm like, dude, my dad might die. Like my dad might. That's when it really started to dawn on me. I'm like, oh my God, that's my dad's doctor. Oh my God, this is my dad. So anyway, I get off the phone. I'm informing everybody that my dad might be passing, you know, and then I got to make these decisions about. And they're like, don't put him on a feeder. Don't do this. Don't do that.
So you're making all these close family calls, and you're getting all these close family advice.
Yeah, and they're like, don't
time.
put him on a feeder. I refuse to put him on a feeder because of all the bad stuff that goes with that. You know, all this stuff. And I'm like, God, I feel so bad for my dad. I'm the idiot who's making these decisions. Like, I don't want to be 91. I don't want to be in a hospital. I don't want a dickhead like me making the choices for me when I'm in that situation.
Right.
So anyway, I go back into the ICU, and this is way longer, by the way, than I thought this was going to be.
There was
91.
No time limit.
So I go back into the ICU, and they're setting up the drip. So I sit down, the blood transfusion. So I sit right there next to my dad, and it's a slow drip. So it's taking forever. I'm watching the blood go down that tube into his arm, and it's literally like not even slow. It's like the slowest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It's barely moving. My mom points out the window, because the ICU has a big window where people can observe you like a freaking chimp at the zoo. And, you know, she points at these three doctors. And I go, oh my God, this is like the end of ET, dude. Like, that's what I thought in my head. I was like, oh, this cannot be good. I can always pick up the look on these doctors. When I was coming to see my dad for that month, and I came around the corner and there was a doctor there, before they said one thing to me, I knew it was either good or bad news. Mm-hmm. I could tell. And they come in, and the guy and I had been asking for a lung specialist for a couple of days. Mm-hmm. You know, I was like, we got to have a lung specialist. There's got to be something we can do with this. So this guy comes in with another doctor, and there's like three of them. And they go over to my dad, and they, you know, he's really laboring to breathe. He's lifting his shoulder to breathe because his lungs are collapsed, and he's got oxygen on and all these machines going. And he's like, hi, I'm the Stanford guy you've been waiting for. I've been the Stanford lung specialist for, 40 years. I'm getting ready to retire. This is the guy who's going to take my job. And I'm like, okay, so I'm not going to talk at all. I'm going to listen to what you have to say. I'm not going to ask. And if you know me, that's not the way I operate. I'm asking a bunch of questions, and I'm talking a lot. Right. So I was like, I'm going to listen to this guy. Mom is sitting over there by Dad's bedside, and I'm standing up with my arms crossed. And this guy comes to me and he goes, let me tell you something. I went through all the data. I went through every bit of the data, and you have great doctors. We wouldn't have treated your dad any differently. Your dad is the sickest man in this entire hospital right now. That's why I'm here. Okay, that's good news. What else do you have for me, Grim Reaper? Dude, what do you got for me? So I did ask him where he had been for the last 3 days. And he's like, I don't remember what he said. Something like, I'm busy. I'm a busy guy. Something. So he's like, do you see your father lifting his shoulder to breathe? He's not comfortable. He's not. And I've gone through all the data. I've seen the hundreds of scans they've done on his, and he knew my name. He knew my name. He was like, he knew my name. I didn't introduce myself to him. He knew my name. And he's like, you're his advocate. You're the power of attorney. I've been through all the data. I've seen the blood work. I've seen the labs. I've seen all the scans. I've seen everything. And all it says is keep him comfortable. No suffering. Look at his shoulder. He's lifting that shoulder to breathe for you. He's laboring for you to breathe. Those lungs are collapsed. Those lungs are devastated. They are completely devastated with inflammation, with juice all in them. See all these monitors, all these drips, all the things that are going on here, all the beeps and the sounds and all that. None of it's working. Your dad is shutting down. Your father is passing. All I read in the data is that you want him to be comfortable. You don't want him to suffer. Am I right? You don't even know what to say, right? The day before you were celebrating, you were making plans to bring your dad home. You were high as a kite. And now you're dealing with the Grim Reaper. So I'm in a situation where this guy's saying you need to make a decision. This is end of life. This is your dad's body is passing. Your dad's body is shutting down. What are you going to do? What I can tell you is he's had the best care he could possibly have for a 91-year-old man. You've done everything for your father that you can do. He's shutting down. These things don't work. My mom is sitting there. My mom can't even look at my dad. Her eyes are in the ground. She's devastated. Hearing these words is devastating. And I'm putting on a show. I'm like worried that my dad can hear this. Normally I would take these doctors outside of that ICU unit to talk to them because they can hear everything that's going on. So I said, okay, give me a few minutes. Let me figure out what I'm going to do. You're pressing me here, dude. I can't. My mom was like, no, we can't do any of this. The Lord is in charge. We cannot do any of this. Don't take him off of anything. That can't do it. The guy comes to me, the chieftain, the 5-star general, the doctor of all doctors, Mr. Lung comes to me and goes, your mom's a Christian, right? And I said, oh yeah, she's a Christian. And he said, he walked over to my mom and he said, your husband is shutting down. None of this is working. None of these machines, none of it's going to work. And by this time, my dad's arm was like elephant seal blubber. Like all that inflammation and all of everything they were pumping into him was just collecting in his arm and in his chest and in his, it was just like discolored and it was all just blubbery. It was like filled with water, just filled with all that stuff that they were putting.
Swollen up.
And so anyway, I ended up making a deal with my mom because, I understood this guy was in my face. Like he was making eye contact. He was like legitimately trying to really give it to me. He's like, that blood transfusion, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Your dad is at the end of life. So we need to make him comfortable. So I was like, I had to make a deal with, I'm like, Mom, what do you want to do? Mom, what do you want to, I don't know. Oh, well, okay, so let's compromise. Shut everything down. And, Mom, do you want me to keep that oxygen? Yeah, keep the oxygen mask on. Okay, we'll do that. You got it? Took them 5 minutes. They unplugged everything. There was no heart monitor. I mean, there was no nothing. He was not even being monitored. And this is at like 2:00 in the afternoon. This is what's going to happen. This is the way that people, people probably already understand all this stuff. And I'm just doing this for myself. But that's what happens is they turn everything off and they left that oxygen on. He was on no medication, nothing. My mom made it. That was maybe 3:00 in the afternoon. And my mom couldn't even raise her head to look at my father. She was holding his hand, but she just could not bear it. And you're going to run into people that are like that. You're going to run into people who can't do it. Some people have it in them and some people just do not. And, she was like, I got to go. And I was like, Mom, if you can go while Dad is on his deathbed, and you can forgive yourself and you can live with that. You go ahead. I'm not going anywhere. I can't leave. She's like, I'm a 90-year-old woman. I haven't slept. I haven't eaten all day. I can't do this. I can't. I go, okay. All right. So I called a friend. My mom left. Just me and Dad. probably about 7:00 in the evening. And it's just me and Dad. And Dad's out. You know what I mean? Like his eyes, I keep opening his eyes. I keep taking my thumbs and open. Hey, man, are you still with me? You still with me? Oh, yeah. And he was there. I mean, I could see, and I was hoping that he could hear everything because I had 2 or 3 hours alone with him. So all I'm saying to him is, did I love you? And I'm going to miss you. And I can't believe this is going to be the last time I'm going to see you. You're saying everything that you can. And you don't know, but everything that you read says that he can hear. Mm-hmm. That the last thing that goes is the hearing. So this is the magic. The silver lining of death. So I got to have somebody somewhere lined it up to where it was me and him. And it was always me and him. It was always me and him. It wasn't always my mom. It wasn't always my brother. It wasn't always anybody else. It was always me and him. We had become best friends. So it was, you don't think about this at the time, but it was pretty magical that it was just going to be me and him, that Mom had gotten a ride home. So the overnight nurse that was with him in the morning when his oxygen tanked walks in, and he's a 6'6" white guy. And I'm like, the lights are out. There's no monitors on. I'm pretty emotional. I'm not really emotional because I've cried kind of all of my tears out too. I'm exhausted, and I'm just talking to Dad. I'm rubbing his hand and holding his hand and, walking around and talking on my cell phone sometimes and telling family members that he's getting ready to pass and to make plans and to do this for me and do that for me. And this guy walks in and he's like this big, burly, 6'6" white guy nurse, right? And he's like, this isn't the guy that I left this morning, pointing to my dad. And I go, yeah, man, can you please just talk some English to me? Like, what happened? Like, I left here yesterday and he was in great shape. And he's like, I understand what you're talking about, man. I was with him all night last night. And let me tell you what happened. So this is the night before my dad passed. He goes, your dad was restless all night long. He did not sleep. His eyes were wide open and he was laying flat on the bed and he was just staring, like he would just shift to the corner. Like there was his eyes, he saw something in the corner and then he saw something over there. And then he would start lifting up his hands and pointing. And he was restless. He wouldn't sleep. So we saw in the notes where you were like, got to make him sleep. He's got to sleep to recover. I was always barking at him about you got to make sure he sleeps because they were lying to me about that too. The nurses would just say, oh yeah, your dad had a great night's sleep. Bullshit. I knew he didn't sleep because he was acting like a freaking nut bag or he couldn't open his eyes. I knew when he slept and when he didn't sleep. They didn't want to hear my shit. So, the guy was like, the nurse was like, yeah, he didn't sleep, man. He didn't sleep at all. I gave him a sleeping pill at 10 o'clock. And your dad's body was so shut down. Every organ, like he's just figuring this out, right? He's like, every organ in your dad's body was so shut down that sleeping pill didn't even work until 6 a.m. when he finally nodded off. You understand what I'm saying? Like that pill didn't work because his organs didn't work. His organs were all shutting down. And I was like, oh, okay. So he finally nodded off. Yeah. And he's like, let me tell you what's going on with your dad. He goes to a white board that's in the room and he draws 2 lungs. And he goes, see this? The outside of the lungs have a little pocket. That's where the oxygen gets out into the blood. See, I should have been paying attention in biology, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
And it's like the forest for the trees, right? When you're in this battle, you can't really see all this stuff. But when you get outside of it, I'm always telling you to separate a little bit because you see things so much clearer. I couldn't do that. I was in the middle of the battle. He's like, this is your dad's lungs. And on the outside, these air pockets are completely full of juice. He can't breathe. They're collapsed. The whole thing is filled with pneumonia, with pus, with what they would call inflammation. And he's like, he's just breathing because they're forcing that oxygen into him. Take him out that oxygen, it's not going to happen. So I was like, well, thanks for taking some time out and telling me about that. And he's like, yeah, hey, so let me check the computer real quick. And he goes over to the computer, and I'm just sitting there talking to Dad or whatever. And he's like, oh man, you took your dad off everything. I go, yeah. I took him. I think I did. What did I take him off of? And he's like, yeah, you took him off everything. The only thing I can give him is pain pills. There's nothing. Nothing. So the whole room, the whole ICU room was like quiet and peaceful. Yeah. And he's like, they gave him some Dilalud. Have you heard of that? Dilalud?
I have not. No.
Okay, there's some kind of painkiller. It's not morphine, but it's some kind of a drip that they put in his arm because he couldn't swallow anything. So they put Dilalud, something like that. It's some kind of a painkiller. So they dripped that into him, and dude, like he turned into an angel. Like he turned into it was like immediately he wasn't, suffering. I mean, he wasn't laboring. It wasn't suffer, but it was a labor to breathe. His eyes were closed and stuff, but you could just tell. So he goes, hey, you want to help me? Turn him? And I was like, well, wait a minute. What happened this morning? He goes, oh, well, this morning I turned him. He was doing fine. Like he was at 25% and he was looking, he didn't sleep all night, but he had taken a little bit of a nap, and I had to turn him because of the bed sores. They have to do that like every 2 or 3 hours, I guess. So he turned him on one side, and then he turned him on another side, and then he turned him flat and put him back in the bed. And about 5 minutes later, everything tanked. And I'm like, yeah, what am I missing? What happened? He goes, this is what happened. I turned him on one side, and when I turned him on his side, all of that juice flooded out one side of his lungs. And then when I flipped him and went on the other side, it flooded out the other side of his lungs. Then when I laid him flat with, not flat, his head was elevated, but when I laid him back in bed, it was only a matter of time. I didn't know this at the time. He didn't know that at the time, but he's like, when I laid him, it was just a matter of time before he was going to be unable to breathe, before that inflammation was going to choke him out. So, he immediately tanked, and he was like, we just worked and got him back. We got him. It took us all the way to 80%. And he's like, that we can only go to 100% on the oxygen. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, well, I can bump this up. I can bump this up to 90. I go, yeah, bump it up. So between the bumping up of the oxygen to 90% and the pain medication that they gave him, he was really in good shape. So, but it's still, I just can't explain this. You're still not really there. You still don't know. You're still holding on to hope that it's going to be okay, that you're going to bring him home. Even though you're going through all this, it just hasn't soaked in. And so he's like, hey, you want to turn him? And I had helped turn all these nurses turn Dad the whole time. Yeah, sure. So we turned him on one side, and the guy goes, oh, your dad took a big shit. And I'm like, oh, cool. You told me that all of his system was broken down, man. At least his shitter's working. And he was like, he looked at me all serious, and he was like, no, that's not the way it works. This is the end. When a person, when their body shuts down, right? The organs in the body will go into like this emergency mode, and they will kind of start eating off each other, right? Because dad had nothing in his belly. He hadn't eaten anything, right? He had nothing in his belly. So the organs just kind of started to kind of go into emergency mode and start eating. So that's what you're seeing. And then the bowels work on a muscle. Your bowels work on a muscle. So he just let it go, right? The muscle stopped working. So he had to explain that to me, like when someone takes a big shit at the end, that's the end. It's pretty much the end. So we're going to make him I'm going to clean him up. We're going to make him super comfortable. I think he probably could have been sued. Somebody could have sued him for all this, but he was like willing for whatever reason. Like some people could read me and they could understand that I was really devastated and that I was really just trying to do everything I could for my dad. There was no other thing going on there. And some people really felt sorry for me and would take me over to the side and say things to me along the way. And he was kind of one of those guys. He wanted to be real with me. So we made Dad super duper comfortable, like probably a lot like George Washington at Mount Vernon, like, made the pillows all perfect and got him all set up. And, he was good. And then I had like an hour with him, And, I'm just sitting there holding his hand and touching him and talking to him. Again, like I'm continually telling him how much I loved him, how much I remembered these things, how much I was going to miss him, how I was going to take care of everything, how you can just go, man, I don't want you to suffer. Remember this, remember that. Like, I didn't stop talking pretty much. He was probably saying, dude, can you shut the fuck up? Like, he was probably like ready for me to shut up, because I'm saying everything. You don't know what to do. And, I'm trying to make sure that I don't leave anything out here, but I will tell you that I was overwhelmed by the amount of peace that had come over my dad.
Mm-hmm.
By the amount of, and what happens is they take a breath and then they don't take another breath for about 15 seconds. And you're thinking, Dad, are you still with me? And I'm lifting his eyes open. I'm lifting his eyes open. All day, he's probably sick of me for doing that too. I was lifting his eyes open all day going, hey, I want to tell you that, I got this whole thing handled. And he's probably going, Dad, you're never going to let me go, are you? Like, he's probably, that's what I imagine. And I'm lifting his eyes and I'm looking in his eyes the whole time. There at the end, I'm lifting his eyes and he's doing that 15 seconds. And then it would take 30 seconds. So, and then no breath, And then he would catch another one. Then you wait then he'd catch another one. And then he just didn't take another breath. And I went, oh my God, did you take off on me? You could barely notice. I mean, it was so peaceful, you could barely notice. And I was like, oh my God, did you take off on me? Did you seriously take off? Are you gone? And I took my fingers and I opened up his eyes. And then I let him go, and his eyelashes didn't close. Like his eyes wouldn't close. I had to close them. And I was like, oh my God, you took off on me, dude. This is it. You're gone. You took off on me, didn't you? Checked his pulse in his neck, nothing. Checked his chest, nothing. Took my hands and put them on his bony ass shoulders. I mean, he had nothing left. He was like a toothpick at the end. And I took my hands and I shook him a little bit. I said, come on, man. Are you gone? Did you take off on me? Are you still there? Are you gone? And then I saw his tongue kind of do a little wiggle. And then he did a little swallow, which turns out to be just muscles, right? It's just your muscles, last little movement of your muscles. And then I took my hands and I put them back behind his head and I shook him a little bit. And I said, man, you took off on me, didn't you? You're gone. You took off on me, didn't you? You took off on me. And then I went through that whole regimen again one more time. I lifted up his eyes and eyelids and he was gone. And then his pulse and then his chest. And then, you just go through your, it's like, I can't even explain it. I can't even. So it took every ounce of energy pumping through my body to make my feet move, to walk outside of his room and go into the lobby of the ICU and say, hey, everybody. There was nobody there. I think that my dad stopped breathing. And you expect people to run in. You expect you expect everybody to kind of run in and, no, it's a big deal. No, try to shock him back. But I had no resuscitation on my dad. There was no ventilator. There was none of that. Because when they resuscitate you and you're a 91-year-old man, they're going to break your ribs.
Right.
They're going to make everything way worse. So anyway, me and Dad had all had an opportunity to talk about the way he was going out. I did it according to his book. So, they wait around, they finish their Diet Cokes and they smoke up their cigarettes and they finish watching the end of their show. And then they come in and they go, oh yeah, your dad's passed away. I think the worst part of that is that they turn the monitor back on and then you hear the flat and the red 0. So I'll never forget that. And then the lack of, so probably there was a room full of doctors. They come in with the stethoscope. What's the thing when they listen? Yeah. What's that thing called?
Stethoscope.
He can't say it either.
Stethoscope.
Yeah, that's what it was. So they checked that out, and they
only because you couldn't say it. You made me doubt myself.
So they check all that stuff out. What's really weird is they can't make any eye contact. So they're not the most social creatures in the world to start out with, and they're pretty legally binded. I'm sure there's a lot of legalization going on there. So they they don't make eye contact. And I was like, is he gone? Is he gone or what? Like, I had to ask. And they're looking around at each other over my dad's body. And they're looking around at each other waiting for somebody else to answer. And I'm like talking to the nurse, the dude, the 6'6" dude. I'm like, is he gone? He's like, he's in a better place. I'm like, cool. All right. So they left and they're like, yeah, you can have as much time as you want with your dad. And I'm like, dude, I've had like a month. I can't even cry. Like, my dad is officially dead and I don't even have any tears left. I can't even cry. Like, for me, I just felt almost some relief on some, and you had asked me that like weeks ago, if there would be any relief involved if my dad ended up passing.
Just knowing how much time and energy and worry you have for him, that if he were to pass, would it be some sort of relief? And your initial reaction was no.
No, yeah, I was going to punch you in the face. Yeah, I was like, no, yeah. And there is that sense, a little bit of that sense, but I will tell you this. So everyone clears out, they turn the light out, and it's just me and Dad. And I really, just sat there for a minute at the bottom of his chair. I said, and the last words, I can't, I can't believe that this is the last time that I'm going to see you. Right. I can't believe this is the last time that I'm going to see you. It's me and you. It's always just been me. It's always just been me and you, It's always just been me and you. And here we are again, right? And now it's just going to be me. You just decided to take off without me. I got it. So that was literally it. Because I had been through it, right? I had said everything to him probably before he wanted to hear it. Right. I had said everything. And I do believe that he heard what I was saying to him. I do believe that. And people are going to think I'm an idiot. They're going to say I'm crazy. Oh, it's just your way of coping and getting through everything and all that. It doesn't matter to me what other people say. It doesn't matter. They weren't there, didn't see it. I'm going to believe what I'm going to believe. So I literally left. I had my dad's Neptune. He's being cremated. Yeah. So I had his Neptune Society, and I walk outside, and there's these 5 or 6 doctors sitting around in a circle, just standing around talking to each other, like when we played hacky sack at Carlmont, right? Mm-hmm. Where's the hacky sack? Sitting there, and they couldn't make eye contact with me. I'm like, so what are we doing? What are we doing? I mean, it was like awkward silence for 20 seconds. I'm like, what are we doing? I have this Neptune card here. I have his cremation card. Do I need to use this?
Yeah, yeah. You're looking for some guidance. Okay, now what?
And they don't even know what. They don't even know what's. I don't know what's going on with it. Like, they're expecting me to completely wig out. I don't know what is wrong with doctors. But, I'm not judging. And, it is what it is. They're used to this stuff. They're professionals. So I was like, what do I do? And they were like looking around. And then I looked at the nurse again, the dude. And I'm like, what do I do? Do you need my card? And he was like, no. He has a pacemaker. We have to get the pacemaker and we have to dress him out. He goes into the morgue here in the hospital, and then they'll call you tomorrow. So I was like, I'm not going to fucking miss this place one bit. And I just took off. I'm like, that's it. He's gone, right? That's it, right? And I walked away, and I'm like, I'm not going to fucking miss this place one bit. And the doctors kind of chuckled. And one of them who had been through it with me, one of the nurses who had been through it with me, hit me on the back and said, you did everything you could do, man. You did everything. I mean, I got to know all of these nurses.
Sure.
I got to know everything about these nurses. I mean, we just sat around and watched my dad. When I would show up, they would leave. I was like the third string nurse, right? So anyway, it's funny because, not funny. It's not funny. It's kind of sad. They were supposed to call me the next day. So you wait around all day long thinking about your dad's dead body in a refrigerator at the hospital, at the morgue in the hospital. No one calls. So I finally, 4:00 in the afternoon, I call him, like, leaving messages for random people. I don't even know who they are. Half the time the numbers don't work, right? The next morning I make another call and, somebody says, yeah, your dad's here. And, the Neptune Society was really great. They were the ones who really...
I've heard nothing but great things.
They were the only ones who... my dad had everything lined up, which was beautiful. So my advice is...
My parents just signed up too.
Yeah, that's my advice is, my dad had every single thing documented. So when me and my brother started going through all of his paperwork, there was no question. There was not one single question. Everything was like, I'm going to be burned up when I kick the bucket. I mean, for the last year, all my dad talked about was when I kicked the bucket, call the 800 number, burn me up. Simple guy. He'd outlived everybody in his family. He had no friends left. They were all dead. So I think he was like obsessed with his death to a certain degree. He was like, when I kick the bucket, call the 800 number. They're going to burn me up, get my ashes back to...
all taken care of.
It was all completely taken care of.
Neptune, and they know how to do it. They know how to be...
I learned a couple of things from this. 91 years old, I don't want to get there. I say that now and people think I'm crazy, but to see the 91 is not going to be for me. And that's a choice everybody needs to make for themselves. Most people are afraid of death. So they're like, yeah, but this is my first experience with death. And there's no way I want to get to 91. Number two, you can go fuck yourself about a hospital. They're going to fucking kill you. That's where people go to die. I do not want to go to a hospital. I do not want to go. I would rather you throw me off a bridge. I would rather you shoot me in the head. I would write it down. This is documented now. This is recorded. There's no way, dude. There's no way. And I think everybody probably complains about hospitals at this point when they lose a parent in a hospital. Everybody, I'm sure I fit that mold. But it is not what people make it out to be. One of the lessons that I've learned through this is that, people want their insurance, they want their great care, they want to spend all their money, they worry about their health care. Dude, it's where people go to die. There are a lot of mistakes that get made. There are a lot of, these people are not perfect. The American healthcare system is a business, and we all need to wrap our heads around understanding that is a business. Okay. It is, and they are liable for everything. So it's like the insurers and the hospitals, they can only do so much. They can only communicate with you so much, and they can only do so much to treat you before they're going to become liable. And they've been sued by everybody on the whole planet. So they're a little bit in decline. I would say that's, and one more observation that I would like to make. And this was something that was shocking to me, because I was in the hospital every single day advocating and going to bat. Stressful. It took a lot of energy, but I did it because I love my dad. There's no choice. You're going to do what you got to do, right? What I was shocked at is the number of people that came into the ICU that were alone, that never, one family member never came to see them.
Yeah.
Nobody visited them. Nobody had it. They all died alone, or they had to get through that alone. And I don't know how anybody gets through the ICU with no support or no love or no advocate, right? So that's the advice that I want to give people is to look, everybody's different. It's all a very personal decision. It's probably the most personal decision. So talk to the loved one, make sure all their wishes are taken care of, and that you do everything that they want, not what you want. I was probably a little bit selfish with my dad passing because I didn't want him to go, and he probably held on for me. He probably could have gone earlier, but I was probably a little bit too selfish, and I held on a little bit. Let him go. Let him go. And do everything you can for them. You advocate for them, because no one wants to die alone. And I would say more, dude, I saw so many people alone in that ICU. I couldn't even believe it. I was like the only person in the ICU. Everybody came in there alone. And it was like the saddest thing. So no hospitals for me. Fuck that. I no way, dude. And this is so you realize that people get in car accidents and die. Kind of a beautiful thing. They don't have to go to a hospital. They don't have to go to an American hospital that is publicly owned, that is corporate, that is in the business of big profits, right? You don't have to go through that. There's only so much you can do. And my experience was they're not that great. They're not that great. And we spend so much time in our lives worrying about dying and worrying about our health care. Why not just live? Why not just live, right? If something happens, go to the emergency room. But we got to live, right? And I think that 91 is not for me. 91 is not going to be for me. Going to a hospital, I learned that. And everybody's going to have to learn these lessons. So that's kind of why I decided to come out and talk about, look, I'm going to miss my father. I mean, like every day you wake up and you don't know, it's like you just takes everything to get out of bed. And then everything is a reminder, right? And so it feels like every day is Groundhog Day.
The lack of responsibility now for him is a reminder.
Everything,
right? You know, it's okay. I don't have to worry about him, and that's a reminder in itself.
Everything. And the other thing that I noticed was that they will hang on for you.
Yeah,
and you have to. You don't have to, because I heard all kinds of stories of people forcing their parents to keep living, or their loved ones to keep living. But you have to be willing to let them go, and you have to communicate that to them. You have to be able to say, hey, you can go, because most of the time, or in my situation, I think my father was hanging on for us, right? Yeah. He wanted to make sure that we were all taken care of and that there was no problem. But in the end, you know, it was a terrible experience because it was so unexpected. And losing him brings this huge void into my life. And there are so many regrets. Like, even though I tried to handle everything perfectly, you're going through this for the first time. So you're making judgment calls, right? You're making these judgment calls that you hope are the right calls. And some of them are, some of them aren't. But your parents definitely deserve you, the power of attorney, to be there for them.
Well, I think I think it's really special that you shared all this. Number one, I think as like from anything, one of the blessings is that I'm able to, for me personally, is to learn from your experience. So I'm also better prepared. So it's in a strange way, it's a gift.
It is. You know? That's the way you end up looking at it, right? And the whole time that
it's a friendship. It's like you're there. You're able to share with me your experience that will then allow me. You went through
it because I was coming back from the VA and coming here.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, good day, bad day, good day, bad day, right. Up and down. Right. You were the one person who was there.
Yeah, and I think and I think what's most impressive for me, and I know a lot of people who know you listening, is what you did for your dad. I think there are, like you said, there are a lot of people who are alone in there because they don't have someone like you, and I think that's, you still have your mom and you're there for your mom. But I think it is.
That's the transition, right? That's the transition, right? Now all the attention goes to
now your mom,
right? So that's what it is. So I kind of feel like I've said enough, and I think
there was such an element, a lesson of selflessness that you showed that I just think is absolutely amazing to have witnessed. Of the way you continue to be with your mom, that you have been with your parents, but what you showed your father, and I certainly would just take his words to you of just being such a thank you, thank you, and don't worry about him. He's okay, and certainly he's certainly
just that opportunity, right? And I definitely appreciate you being here for me. I mean, when I was going through all that, my brother wasn't even here. You were my brother at that point. So, and you were always very gracious. You were very open. And that's another thing that, I keep saying that. This is another thing. But all the people that come out of the woodworks when you're going through something like this, right? The people who have been through it and share their stories and all that kind of stuff. And so, there's been people in and out of the house for, I hope they're done coming by because I can't handle it. But
do you know why people come by?
Yeah,
and want to help? It's because they know
they feel bad.
No, it's because they know you would do it for them.
Oh yeah.
People don't do this for people who are dicks, who are assholes. It's people will be there for you because they know that if the situation was reversed, you would do the same for them, and that's how in the end that is our community of friends and family. It's the community of everybody out in Chumcast land who's listening to this is only doing it for us because if they had a Chumcast, we'd listen to theirs. But in the end, it's because of who you are, Keith, and I think again, very, very impressed, honored, amazed of how you were to your father.
You're going to have the same opportunity. All of us are going to have the same opportunity, which is why, really, the one thing that made me decide to do this, besides the fact that it's a permanent record that I will always be able to reflect on and listen to and remember, because I was afraid that I would forget these things. All these details that I spent all this time talking about, I was afraid that I would forget about them. And we have an opportunity. We have all this equipment. We have a studio. We have all this great stuff where we can do this. But literally, who's next, right? Who's next? Everybody. This is something that everybody gets to go through. My dad.
We're all in the same train. We all.
I used to have these conversations with my dad about dying. I was like, and this is years ago, 10, 15 years ago. I'm like, Dad, when you die, I want you to come back and show me. Like, I want you to be like a crow on the freaking fence line, or I want you to do. Oh yeah, sure, I'll do that for you. I go, really?
If the rules in heaven allow it, yeah, absolutely, right.
I really want you to do that. I want you to do
there
that.
There could be rules up there we're not aware of, which we have to give them a little credit for.
Yeah, and then the other thing. So again, my dad was very religious, a Christian man, believed in God, right? Whatever, judge me, judge our family, whatever you want. That's what we believed, right? And he was very, very, very religious. He would say, after he was done saying, when I kicked the bucket, he would be like,
that's in the scriptures.
Every other day, he would be like, when I kick the bucket, you call that 800 number and get me burned up. But he was like, Keith, when you pass away, that's the lonely path. He said, that's the lonely journey. So when you pass, this is what he believed, in order to get to heaven, it's the only thing you have to do. You have to do it all by yourself, right? You have to do it all by yourself. You walk that path, whatever that pathway is to get to the pearly gates, whatever that pathway is.
He might have been proven wrong. When you talked about your dad looking around the room at the end, he might have been.
I don't know what that was.
He might have been seeing the family getting ready to greet him.
Yeah,
that's what I thought of.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but I certainly read about it. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was the surge. So they say that people that are dying have a surge like 24 to 48 hours, sometimes a week before they pass away. They'll give you this false hope, and everybody falls for it. And Dad did that, I think, for about a month. He kept doing it. He's like, this is working. I'm going to keep fooling these guys, right? But really what I appreciate is that we were able to do this. I mean, death is a weird thing. It makes a lot of people very, very uncomfortable. And I didn't think I could ever get through this. Like you, as a kid, or you think about your parents passing away, and oh man, I could never handle it. But you shift into this gear. You shift into this. You tap into this resource, and you become somebody that you never. It's an out of body experience. You become this person that you didn't know you were. Right. And you didn't know you had it in you. I thought I would crumble. Like being as close as I
You don't know until you go through it.
You don't know any of this until you go through it. That's why I'm telling you and anybody who's dumb enough to listen to this Chumcast, line it all up. Because when you think you have it all lined up, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't. And as the power of attorney, they're going to come to you. They're going to call you at 6:00 in the morning, and you're going to run to the hospital, and they're going to say, you need to make these decisions. And you're going to be like, should I do that transfusion, or should I just let him go? Right. Should I change that medication, or should I just let him go? And there's going to be several, it depends on how they go, but there are these gut-wrenching decisions that you have to make. So I'm going to think about my dad every day.
Yeah.
And now I have this new thing where I see these people who have lost people that they loved and how damaged they become. Like, it really is a different sort of life. It's a complete game changer. It changes the way everything. It changes the way you see things, the way you view things. And I've known all these people along the way that have lost people. And it gives me this empathy and this sympathy and empathy for them, instead of, I can understand how somebody would become an alcoholic. It numbs the pain, right? I can understand how somebody would become a heroin addict. It numbs the pain. Like, I can understand that. And not only is it a transition for my dad into whatever the next world is that he's going to be in, but it's a transition for us. It's a transition for the whole family.
Right.
I didn't even get into telling my mom. I had to go home at 9:00 that night and tell my mom. Oh. And she couldn't even believe it, right? I thought you were going to be up all night. I thought you were going to be with your dad all night.
Right.
Well, he passed away at 9. You should have stayed, Mom. You should have stayed. I told you to stay. See, that's a mistake. Should have never stayed. I should have never said that. Sometimes the venom just flows, bro. Yes.
I tell you. Well, how
are we going to sum this up?
Well, we're going to sum it up. I'll sum it up with a thank you to you for sharing, number one. And I think there's two things. It's a cheers to your father for a life well lived.
We'd have to drink the $2 Chuck from Trader Joe's. That's all he's drinking.
We'll go do that.
Or the sangria at the Sirloin and Brew.
But not only is it a rest in peace to your father, a cheers to your father.
That's right.
It is for me in my final words here is cheers to you for a son honoring his father well.
Don't Listen. A Basic Chumcast has been an exclusive presentation of Whetstone Entertainment in association with Is Chill Productions. Subscribe, follow, like, and share us while on your favorite social media hangouts and our YouTube channel. We're not into begging, but if you like us, review us and support us by continuing to check us out on your favorite podcast platforms. Find more fun and hit us with your feedback at don'tlistenchumcast.com.
Yeah, that's fantastic.